lecture previous to the last lecture, in which he was talking about those who worship Allah upon hope alone. Hope alone. He said, Ha'ula'i, these individuals are the Murji'ah. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, that it's good if you can memorize the names and you can know the leaders of these particular innovative principles of innovation or bid'ah, the leaders of the Mubtadi'ah and their principles, but if not, just to know the principles so that you can abstain from it, so that you can avoid it. As the poet said, Araftu shar, I learned evil not for evil's sake alone, but to avoid it, so that I wouldn't fall into it. So the Murji'ah, these, besides the many innovations they have this innovation of worshiping Allah up on hope, based upon raja, hope alone. And this is because they exaggerated in the text or the nusus dealing with the wa'd of Allah. Al-wa'd is the promise of Allah. And if you just look at the verses of Quran talking about the promise of Allah, and you never look at the verses of Quran dealing with the punishment of Allah, then you see what your state would be. You will always be in a state where you're happy, you're pleased, oh, I'm okay. Verses that talk about Allah will forgive whatever you do. Verses that speak about that you'll enter paradise as long as you have an atom's weight of this and then the other of Iman. So they looked at these nusus, or these texts. They looked at these particular verses of Quran and these particular ahadith, and as the Shaykh said, balighu. They went, they became made ghulu, was exaggerative in it, took it beyond its scope. Hatta wasala bihim al-had, until they reached the limit that they have this monumental mad statement that they made. La yadurru ma'al iman ma'asiyah. Iman is not harmed by any sin you will commit. Kama la tanfa'u ma'al kufri ta'ah. Just like if you are a disbeliever, no amount of obedience will benefit you. This is it's a big mistake. But nothing can harm your Iman once you have it. Iman to them is shay'un wahid, one thing. Once you have it, nothing can harm it. You can commit as many sins as you want and you won't be harmed, just as if you was a kafir and you did all the worships of things that would bring you close to Allah, in all the worships in the world, all the righteous actions in the world, it wouldn't benefit you, you would still be kafir. Of course, this is a mistake, this is a great mistake. Khata dhahir, alayka salam. A clear mistake. فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ subhanahu wa ta'ala said, listen to the statement of Allah. Have they made those who collect evil deeds? Look at people who constantly commit sins. Istarahu sayyat, constantly commit sins. That's their daydana. They get up committing sins, go out through the day committing sins, and go to bed committing sins. Have they made those who collect sins كَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, like those who believe, وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, and do righteous deeds, rather in this life or the hereafter, or in this life or after they die? سَاءَ مَا يَحْكُمُونَ. Evil is it that they judge by. It's an evil way of judging. How you going to make someone righteous like someone unrighteous? Someone upon ta'ah and obedience to Allah with someone upon ma'asiyah, sin. Someone who pleases Allah with someone who is angering Allah. And this is what you're saying. If you say that everybody's the same in their Iman, and doesn't matter what they do, then you're making those who do righteous actions and who believe like those who collect, who go out and collect, who aren't ags but rush to commit sins. وقال سبحانه وتعالى, Allah says in another verse, all these verses are similar. أَمْ نَجْعَلَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, have we made those who believe وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, and do righteous deeds كَالْمُفْسِدِينَ فِي الْأَرْضِ, like those who are corrupters in the earth? Are they the same? Those who believe and those who do righteous actions, are they like the mufsideen, those who commit fasad, corruption throughout the earth? أَمْ نَجْعَلَ الْمُتَّقِينَ كَالْفُجَّارِ, do we make those who possess taqwa, who fear Allah ta'ala, like the fujjar, like those who are Ahl al-Fajr, people who do evil deeds? They're not the same. This is what these ayat are saying. And if you say that Iman, you can do whatever you want and still have the same Iman, the Iman of the level of Jibreel or Mikael or Abu Bakr Siddiq, and you can have strong Iman and you're committing all types of sins, then you're making the bad equal with the good. the one who's righteous equal with the one who's unrighteous. And this is something that's not allowed, and this is something that these two ayat show that it's unjust and incorrect. Surah Al-Jathiyah, verse 21, and Surah Al-Sad, verse 28. إِلَى غَيْرَ ذَلِكَ مِنْ ayat. In other verses, the Shaykh says like this, where Allah denies, and he's speaking specifically to the kuffar, but it's general. It's directed towards the kuffar, but it's general to those who also act or believe like them. And this is because these verses came regarding the kuffar who had believed or had a belief that when they would meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment, as the Shaykh says here, they will get rewarded for their actions. What actions? Worshipped other than Allah, slaughtered to other than Allah, killed each other, raped, murdered, slaughtered. What actions? But their belief was such that they felt that if there's a qiyamah, if they meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they will get al-a'mal, reward for their actions, and they will live in such a way as they lived in the dunya. And this was with them comparing the life of this world with the hereafter. And this is a wrong belief. A wrong belief. And because Allah Ta'ala, even they are upon shirk, and even though they commit all types of injustices, and even though they disobey Allah, He provides for them. So they said the same will be in the hereafter. We meet Allah, if it's a hereafter, we meet Allah. It'll be the same thing. We'll be in good condition. We'll be in good situation, just like it is here. And this is a wrong qiyas. It's a wrong analogy. A very great mistake to even believe this type of matter. And some of them believe that they will have manazil, positions with Allah Ta'ala, and stations with Allah Ta'ala, because they felt they were rich in this life. Well, I'll be rich in the hereafter. If I have a house or two in this life, I have palaces in the hereafter. This is how they thought. And that Allah Ta'ala will honor them, and they will be living in bliss, and they will be living in the way that they lived in this world. Allah Ta'ala is telling them, Sa'u ma za'amu. Evil is what you claim. Wa bi'sa ma taqadu. Evil is what you believe. So this is a false belief. You've done nothing righteous. Matter of fact, you fought the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam and killed the Sahaba. Right? You rejected the Quran, rejected every belief, and now you think you're going to have something good. This is what you call the extreme irja. That you think you're going to get something for nothing. And this is the same thing if someone thinks that they can do any type of evil action they want to do, and they want to affect their Iman. And they're in the same station with Allah Ta'ala, the same state with Allah Ta'ala, same closeness with Allah Ta'ala as someone who does righteous deeds. Guy who stays up all night drinking khamr, getting high and hanging out, is like the guy who stays up all night making tahajjud. Kaif? How? One stays up all night looking through pornographic literature and reading things he ain't supposed to read, looking at things he's not supposed to read, and the other one's reading Quran. They're the same? No way. So this is the issue. The Murji'ah, a group of Ahl al-Bidah that exists amongst us today. And you can see it in the attitudes of many Muslims. Many of them would say, when you tell them about their beard, well, leave me alone, akhi. Iman is in the heart. Many would say, brother, you can't do this, you can't do that. When you saying I'm kafir, I can't, what you trying to say? I'm saying it's a sin. You can't commit sin, shahada. What is this issue? You think you can commit sin? That Allah Ta'ala has placed limits and you're absolved and you're somewhat individual who can go across the limits and nothing will happen to you? That the hellfire is only promised to those who are few individuals, that you're excused from it? Or that your skin won't burn? That you won't be punished? That you can't be restricted? That Allah can't deal with you when you disobey Him? So this is a wrong concept, irja. Feeling safe from the plotting of Allah. Feeling safe that Allah Ta'ala won't pull the rug from under you. That He won't expose you. That He won't punish you. That He won't put your face in the mud, in the dirt, and put you in a despicable state. He will do so, subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you deserve such. And if He is not forbearing with us, and it does not have mercy upon us, and does not excuse us. So this should be understood. So the Murji'ah, they exaggerated when it came to verses about Jannah, verses about those who die, saying La ilaha illallah went to the Jannah, hadith about those type of issues. All these are what? Issues of raja, make you hopeful. But the believer doesn't just think of those verses and forget about punishment. Right? You just think about that verse and just forget about all the verses about the hellfire. The curse of Allah is upon those who slaughter other than Allah. Curse of Allah be upon the liars. That Allah has punishment for the liar. Lying leads to the hellfire. You're just going to run around lying like it's nothing. You know, there's a certain punishment for the usata, for those who commit zina. What will happen to them after certain type of punishments that have been specified for those who commit zina. Certain types of punishments that have been specified with those who backbite and so on and so forth. None of these nusus or these texts don't apply to no one but individuals outside of this universe, or individuals that we know somewhere else, far away, very distant from us, or does it in fact apply and could in fact apply to us? So this is the point that has to be made. So the Murji'ah, group of Ahl al-Bidah, who looked at the verses of Quran and that talked about gentleness, and the verse of Quran that talked about Jannah, and the verse of Quran that gave you hope, and they forgot all about the threats of Allah. All about that Allah Ta'ala has every one of us by our forelock. All about the fact that Allah Ta'ala was to destroy us. There's nothing or no one in existence that can help us. All about the fact that Allah Ta'ala wants to punish us. There's no one that can prevent it. So this is in opposition to the people of Sunnah and the people with the Jama'ah, that which the Salaf was upon, the Sahaba, the ulama, the Salaf, and those who follow them righteously, because they worship Allah Ta'ala upon hub, loving Him first and foremost. They love nothing or no one more than they love Allah. Wal raja, they have hope. They do the good action and hope for the reward. You know, not someone who's hoping and doesn't do the good action. As we said, the individual says, "Man, I want a plot of land, corn as far as the eye can see," and he never buys a plot of land, never goes to the plot of land, never plants anything. What is that? False hope. He's never done anything that would indicate that he is in fact trying to obtain land, nor let alone a crop of corn, let alone one kernel of corn. He's never done anything, but he's hoping. This is an individual who worships Allah Ta'ala like that. Does whatever he wants to do, whenever he wants to do, transgresses the boundaries, forget about Allah Ta'ala, forget about the rights of Allah on him, forget about his duties, does whatever he wants to do, but then he's expecting Jannah. Watch and wait and see what he gets. That faith, that the smile is going to turn into a horrible, sad frown. All that hope is going to come crushing down, and he's going to become painfully aware that he was mistaken in playing with Allah Ta'ala. Al-hub, love. Wal-raja, hope. Wal-khawf, fear. And submission. This is what the Salaf are upon. You Salafi, this is how you worship Allah. You're on the way of the people of Sunnah, this is how you worship Allah. You have love there, you have hope there, but you have fear also. Fear for sins you've committed, may not have been forgiven. Fear for sins you might have done and you didn't make repentance for because you forgot, but Allah didn't forget. You know, you didn't write it down, but it was written down. You know, Allah is aware of it and you've forgotten about it. Fear that your deeds were not perfect. And knowing that they're not perfect. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, they said the secret of istighfar, of making istighfar after acts of worship, is because there's some naqas, there's some deficiency, some tanqis, there's some deficiency in the worship. And knowing that, the Prophet ﷺ would say, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. You know, oh, Allah forgive me. Because there's a deficiency in the worship. Your mind went somewhere else when you were supposed to have in devotion in salah. You know, you might have let some ri'ah to be seen by men, or sum'ah to be heard by men, or something else enter into it. You might have not observed the pillars and the conditions of your worship correctly. So this is why istighfar is there. So they stood up on the Sirat al-Mustaqim, the Shaykh said here. Those who worship Allah on hope, fear, love, and have humility. As Ibn Qayyim Rahimahullah compares it to a bird. The one who worships Allah alone, on hope alone, is like a bird with just one wing. Can't fly. And the one who worships Allah Ta'ala with just the hope or fear alone, if I said hope earlier, fear alone, or if I said fear earlier, hope alone, then he will also like one wing, won't be able to go. And the one who doesn't have the love of Allah doesn't have their head. What bird without a head can he fly? Right? But with love, hope, and fear, then the bird will fly in a very wonderful and very beautiful way. And this is how the worship is. To worship Allah with fear, hope, and love. Fear, hope, and love. That is the way of the people of Sunnah. That is the way of those upon what is correct. Not those who commit all types of sins and then say, well, you know, Allah gonna forgive me. Who are you? If Allah Ta'ala was to take you and place you in the depths of hellfire, would it in any way diminish His kingdom, His rulership? Would He lose something? Subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is something to understand. لأن في هذه عبادة على هذه الصورة وعلى هذه الحال جمعا. Because when you worship Allah with these three things together, He says, you have gathered all the nusus. And this is what Ahlul Sunnah always do. In every area. They gather all the nusus. Nusus being the plural of nas, text. Verses from Quran and a verse from Hadith. They gather it all. They don't just act on one portion of it and leave one portion. They don't just look at the verses dealing with hellfire and forget about the verses dealing with Jannah. They don't just look at the verses dealing with hope and forget about the verses dealing with the fear of Allah. No, they act upon all of the text. Jama'u yani bayna nusus. Al-wa'd wal-wa'id. They gather between the threats of Allah and the promise of Allah. And in this way, they were upon what's correct. They didn't take the way of the Khawarij and the Mu'tazila. The people who feared Allah Ta'ala and forgot all about His rahmah and the mercy, believing that any Muslim who fall into a sin became a kafir and is under the threat of Allah and the curse of Allah, and no way for him to enter the Jannah. These people out of their mind. They forgot all the verses of hope and mercy and forgiveness. Nor did they take the way of the Murji'ah of just hoping, saying that our Iman won't be harmed by sins because we got Iman. You know, I'm a believer. Don't matter what I do. I can drink, fornicate, commit adultery. I can do whatever. I'm a believer. I got Iman. You're going to take that away from me. Are you taking it away from yourself? By the definition that you think you have the right to transgress the boundaries and set by Allah Ta'ala. And they didn't take the way of the Sufis, worshiping Allah on love. Some say, I didn't worship Allah Ta'ala, didn't worship Allah Ta'ala out of fear of His hellfire. That's the Sufis. I didn't worship Allah Ta'ala, hope for His paradise. But I worshiped Allah Ta'ala neither hoping for His paradise, nor fearing His hellfire, but just out of love. This makes them higher than the prophets of Allah. Because all the prophets were saying, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً. And all the prophets was asking Allah for Jannah and safety from hellfire. You better worshiping than them? Yeah, that's the prophets. They got the fear of the hellfire and all that. They worship Allah. But me, I worship Allah just out of love. No, a'udhu billah. Allah Ta'ala told us those verses of Quran regarding the Jannah, and told us those verses of Quran regarding the hellfire, and revealed to Prophet Sallallahu the Sunnah those verses in those matters in Sunnah regarding the paradise and hellfire, so we can fear His hellfire and hope for His paradise. Hellfire, fear of that will make us run from it by avoiding His sins, and hoping for His paradise will make us do good actions and run for His Jannah, race for His Jannah, compete for it. Not sit there stagnant talking about I love Allah. If you loved Allah, you will believe in what Allah Ta'ala says, and you will fear Him, and you will hope and have a trust in Him also.